Before we start the video, make sure to subscribe to my channel. I appreciate all the support I received from you. And as always, all the information in my videos is rumors taken from the internet or the street. I'm not saying the information is fact.
Pick your mans up.
And just because people used to come through shooting us every day. And this block, words can't even explain, man. Can't even explain.
Yeah, man. Little School Valley, 05 way on money. Young Money, man. They in the building.
600 boy, LA, man. LA Capone, man. Get it to him, man. OC2 boys, man.
RondoNumbaNine, man. Number 9 shooter, you hear me?
Hey, RiskyRoad, bitch! Yeah! What the fuck is wrong with you? Hey, I am Brick Squad! Yeah, Brick Squad, what the fuck is you talking about, bro?
You have to be willing to die or go to jail for 100 years if that's the lane that you're stepping in. You have to understand that whether you're 15, 16, you got to think like a man, you know what I'm saying?
So don't be in it. Oh, you're not? Why does everybody say you're only 16 years old?
They say what they want to say.
How old
So
are
how
you?
old are you?
300.
The story of RondoNumbaNine.
I'm off the Zans and I'm off like a lot of lane and shit right now.
I know that.
Studio, new shit coming soon.
So I know. Y'all gotta be quiet.
It's dark as hell. You gotta get up close to one motherfucker.
Outside everything.
Bitch, 7 fucking years.
This is the story of RondoNumbaNine. Along with L.A. Capone, Rondo was 600's next big rap promise. If he were free today, he would probably be signed to OTF and standing as one of the label's biggest artists alongside Lil Durk. But that is a huge if. A lot happened along the way that cut Rondo's journey short, most notably, a first-degree murder conviction. Rondo had an enormous amount of talent, but he was simply too deep in the streets. Not everyone manages to leave that life behind and build a massive rap career. King Von somehow did it, despite being even deeper into the streets than Rondo, but very few people ever get that kind of second chance. Rondo wasn't one of them. Instead, he was sentenced to life in prison for the murder of a taxi driver. This is the story of Rondo, 600's rising rap star, but also one of their main hitters, and how he lost it all. RondoNumbaNine, whose real name is Clint Massey, was born on February 18, 1997 in Chicago, Illinois. Rondo originally originates from RiskyRoad territory, growing up on those blocks with his mother, sister, and older brother. His brother is none other than Big Swirl, who gained a lot of attention in the drill scene after his viral dance in Rondo's Hang With Me music video. Big Swirl was a member of Block/600 but maintained heavy ties to RiskyRoad, exactly like Rondo did before the entire BT situation caused them both to get kicked out of the set. Following that fallout, Swirl pivoted and started claiming Young World. Swirl was a known factor on the streets just like his little brother. Back in June 2014, he was hit with an attempted murder charge, showing just how deep he was in that lifestyle. Tragically, Big Swirl passed away in 2025 following a fatal car crash. Growing up, Rondo never had a father figure around to guide him. He laid it out plain in his verse on Play for Keeps, rapping, "Deadbeat pops, got raised by the block." Instead, Rondo and his siblings were raised entirely by their mother, with his auntie playing a major role in the household to help hold things down. Because of how hard she fought to raise them alone in that environment, Rondo holds his mother in the highest regard, frequently calling her a superwoman. To this day, she remains one of his biggest systems of support and regularly visits him behind bars. Growing up, he lived right in the heart of Risky Road territory, with the family living in the Pullman Wheelworks Apartments residential complex in South Chicago. It was inside those apartments where his mother, with the help of his auntie, did everything she could to raise Rondo and his siblings while navigating the heavy street dynamics right outside their door. Growing up, Rondo was always a hothead, dealing with heavy concentration and temperament issues in the classroom that constantly landed him in arguments and fights. But outside of that school trouble, he had a massive passion for rapping and dancing. There's actually an old video floating around from when he was just 12 years old showing him dancing, and the kid genuinely had crazy good moves. He was obsessed with music back then, always walking around with headphones in, rapping along to whatever lyrics he was listening to. It's crazy to look back on because around this time, he wasn't the feared street figure yet. He was just a regular kid who had a little too much extra energy, which unfortunately meant he couldn't sit still in a classroom. Rondo absolutely hated school and eventually only showed up maybe once a week. It didn't take long for things to completely fall apart. He got kicked out of multiple schools for getting into fights and constantly smelling like weed. In the end, he just gave up on the education system altogether. He stopped going entirely, checked out of the civilian lane, and put 100% of his focus into the streets, chasing money, and rapping.
We cashing out, OTF, FTO, my niggas, we all spazzing out. D-Rolls got that 30 clip, shots bad niggas, you better drop man wax. Hold on, y'all gotta shut up, man. How old are y'all for everything up. His ass is going that letter out the 30 club. Got a red bone with thick hips and a 4-cop, a jet sip. My team winning, ain't no else. Snitch K, I can't tell. Killing shit like Fat Trill. See a op, you better build. Sending shots, they showing tail. Tech hits the ass nail. SteveDrive, fuck the opposite. 808 got a nigga lit. Got money, so it's fucking bitch.
so you don't
Put
have
my
that
L saying free slick.
But it's okay.
Fuck the dicks, I would never trick. Jump from ring, so I fucking brick. Back 11 hit your face quick. Standing here, she got calling big.
Alright, check.
You look so funny. I know.
Rondo and his family moved into what would become 600 territory at a very young age. This was around 2008, when Rondo was only about 11 or 12 years old, way before the actual 600 set was even officially created. Back then, Rondo, Blast, Lil D, and Waldo were part of the very first generation of kids living right there on the block, long before the rest of the roster was recruited. At the time, they were claiming Bang City, which was basically the younger generation of Brick City. Because they already knew guys like Buka and Lil D's older brother well enough, they were easily accepted into the fold of what eventually evolved into 600. While more members got added to the block over time, recruitment eventually hit a wall and had to be put on hold after the original founders of the set started getting killed off. Inside 600, Rondo's absolute closest circle consisted of C-Day, L.A. Capone, Tay 600, Buka, and D-Rose. If you saw Rondo, you saw them, and it was this exact crew that he ended up doing most of his street dirt with as things escalated. Rondo moved up the ranks and gained respect crazy fast within the set, mostly because he was one of the originals and wasn't hesitant to put in work early. By just 13 years old, he was actively out on the blocks, and by 14, he had allegedly already caught his first body and shot someone, which landed him an attempted murder charge as a juvenile. In the very beginning, it started out small with minor drug dealing, robbing, and fighting, but for a hothead like Rondo, the street life escalated at a terrifying pace as he started doing worse and worse things on the block. Before we continue with Rondo's story, let's look at the history of Brick City and 600. 600 was formed in 2009 by D-Thang and Lil Boo, with their territory stretching from 59th to 60th Street, between King Drive and Prairie Avenue. Before 600 came together, the group was known as Brick City. Their main block was 59th and Calumet, which got its name from a long brick alley that ran behind the buildings. Between 2005 and 2008, Brick City was a mix of both gangster disciples and black disciples. Some of the GD members included 600 Breezy, Young Famous, Lil Boo, and Stello. On the BD side, there were members like E-Day and C-Day from the Randolph Towers. D-Thang's older brothers, Trigger and Chief Domo, were also BDs, along with Huncho Hudo, AK, and Low. Between 2007 and 2008, most of the guys who would later become 600 started jumping off the porch. Around this time, everyone hung out in an area called Dipset, which is known as Front Street today. They mostly kicked it around 61st and Wabash, as well as Michigan and Indiana. This shared history is why so many 600 members have deep ties to Front Street. Members like Inky D, Manny, and Boss Moo were all from that territory, even though they didn't officially claim Dipset back then. As for the younger crowd, including RondoNumbaNine and Lil Steve, they weren't allowed to claim Brick City yet. Instead, they claimed Bang City, also known as BCMG, before 600 was officially formed. When D-Thang and Lil Boo created 600 in 2009, they did it because D-Thang's older brothers, Chief Domo and Trigger, told him he was too young to claim Brick City. Instead of waiting, D-Thang and Lil Boo decided to start their own set and run it themselves. Once 600 started going to war with the GDs from Mob and Jaro City, the dynamics changed. The remaining GDs within Brick City and 600 were basically forced to flip and become Black Disciples. By that point, D-Thang and Lil Boo had strictly enforced a no GD policy within 600. It is rumored that Rondo jumped off the porch in 2010 at just 13 years old. By 2011, he was handling guns for real. The turning point for him was losing Baldy and Lil Steve, two older members he highly respected. Around this time, the rest of Rondo's generation started getting active too, taking over for older Brick City members like Young Famous, Breezy, and Trigger, who had already done dirt. What made 600 different was how it was formed. Lil Boo and D-Thang essentially handpicked the members. Because of this, almost everyone in the set was a shooter who wanted to catch a body. L.A. Capone highlighted this mindset in a famous tweet, listing himself, C-Day, Rondo, Tay600, Buka, D-Thang, Mineski, and D-Rose as the true standard for the team, since every single one of them had catched one. One of Brick City's first wars was with M-Town, the set that later would become known as Mob. Brick City got involved to back up their close allies, Front Street, who were going at it heavily with M-Town. While Brick City didn't lose many guys early on, Mob eventually killed Lil Steve in May 2011 because of 600's rising presence. Once 600 was formed, they went all in against Mob and Jaro City. Brick City already disliked Jaro City anyway. From 2008 to 2010, they had teamed up with Squirt Town and 065 Young Money to fight Jaro. Since Squirt Town hung out on Brick City's blocks, they took the brunt of Jaro's drive-bys. Squirt Town eventually retaliated by shooting a top Jaro member, which backfired heavily. Jaro began sliding on them every single day. The feud ended badly for Squirt Town. Domo from Jaro killed Slow Folks, and by September 2011, Tutu from Jaro and Lil B from EBT caught and killed Jizzle. Jizzle was killed on September 26, 2011. This specific murder is important because Tutu was allegedly one of the gunmen, and Tutu would later be killed by RondoNumbaNine in a revenge hit. According to witnesses, a loud argument broke out between two groups of guys. Jizzle, who was wearing a white t-shirt, was in one of those groups. Witnesses suddenly heard gunshots and watched the two sides shoot at each other, noting that one of the shooters wore a black hoodie. As everyone scattered, Jizzle ran to 6031 South King Drive before collapsing on the sidewalk. He had been shot in the head, shoulder, abdomen, and lower torso. He was rushed to Strodger Hospital, where he was pronounced dead. At the scene, police recovered several spent .45 caliber shell casings on the sidewalk and multiple 9mm casings in the street. The police report shows that investigators interviewed Jizzle's mother. She stated that right after the shooting, word on the street was that Tutu from Jaro City and Lil B from EBT were the killers. She added that the two skipped town immediately afterward, fearing witnesses would talk to the cops. Over the years, she kept hearing those same two names. She later learned that Tutu was killed just 2 months after her son, and Lil B was shot and killed by police in March 2014. Jizzle was a highly respected member of Squirt Town, a set closely tied to Brick City and 600, and the police report noted he allegedly had 2 bodies to his name. Ironically, Jizzle was a gangster disciple from a black disciple set, while his killer, Tutu, was a black disciple from a gangster disciple set. It just goes to show how little the traditional nations actually meant, even in 2011. On December 22, 2017, Skinny from Jaro City was arrested and charged with aggravated battery with a firearm. He had fired shots into a school bus, hitting a 28-year-old man and a 14-year-old boy, though neither was the intended target. Facing a long prison sentence, Skinny tried to cut a deal. During an interview with a detective, he claimed he had witnessed information about a 2011 murder and was willing to cooperate. In the interview, Skinny explained that he had been walking with Jaro City members Tutu, Lil Daryl, and Ja, alongside Lil B. As they headed toward a local store near 61st and King Drive, they spotted CJ, also known as Jizzle, a rival from Squirt Town. Skinny stated that both Tutu and Lil B were armed and immediately ran toward Jizzle. Jizzle had just walked out of a building and tried to flee northbound on Vernon Avenue, but Tutu and Lil B chased him down while opening fire. According to Skinny, Jizzle collapsed as he reached the corner of 60th Street. Tutu and Lil B then walked right up to him and took turns shooting him while he lay on the sidewalk, practically standing over him. Skinny ended his statement by picking both shooters out of a photo lineup. Skinny was eventually released from jail in 2020. However, according to Faye from Timb and BG from EBT, this wasn't the first time Skinny had talked to the law. They claimed he had given a similar statement to police about Jizzle's murder back in 2012. What was also very interesting about this report, which was over 200 pages long, was that the exact same guns used to kill Jizzle were used in a double attempted murder on a block just 5 days earlier. My theory is that Tutu and Lil B were desperate to catch a body, failed on a block, and then caught Jizzle instead. In that first shooting, they shot a man named Tyrone and a woman named Antoinette, both of whom were likely innocent bystanders. The report also mentioned that the .45 caliber pistol used in Jizzle's murder was later used to kill Sheroid, a situation we will get to in a bit. In addition, the 9mm gun Tutu used on Jizzle was fired in another shooting on November 19, 2011. Since that happened 9 days after Tutu himself was killed, he clearly passed the gun to someone else before his death. This really shows how much these street weapons get passed around, especially since that .45 caliber gun allegedly ended up in the hands of Bostrel when he killed Sheroid. Losing Jizzle was a tough blow for RondoNumbaNine, especially since he had lost another close friend, Lil Steve, just a week earlier. Lil Steve was Memo 600's older brother and a member of Brick City/600. He was allegedly killed by Lil Scrap and Moochie from Mob, who were both arrested for the crime but later released due to a lack of evidence. Just like the loss of D-Thang, Steve's death was a massive hit to 600. The block SteveDrive was later named in his honor, and Rondo frequently used it as an iconic ad-lib in his songs. Lil Steve was known for being very active on the streets. After Baldy was killed, allegedly also by Lil Scrap, Steve reportedly retaliated by shooting up Scrap's house after Scrap moved close to 600's territory. A wild detail from that time is that Scrap's father would sometimes visit 600's block to beg the members not to kill his son. On the day Lil Steve died, 600 received a call that Scrap was spotted on their block. Lil Steve and a few others went out to confront him, but Scrap opened fire first. Steve was reportedly yelling at his crew to shoot back right when he was hit. The rivalry between Lil Steve and Lil Scrap was deeply personal long before it turned into a full-scale block war. Before Scrap fully jumped off the porch to join Mob, he was frequently bullied by Lil Steve and Bite Down. Back when they all used to play basketball together, and while Scrap was still close friends with Mikado, Steve and Bite Down would constantly try to jump him or treat him badly. A major flashpoint happened at 62nd and Wabash, where Scrap got into a fight with Bite Down and ended up getting jumped. Mikado was actually there when it happened, but he chose not to step in and help his friend. While it is unknown exactly why Lil Steve disliked Scrap so much outside of Scrap's deep family ties to Mob, the animosity between them was intense. The tension peaked the day before the murder when Lil Steve and RondoNumbaNine released a song and music video that directly dissed Scrap. The police quickly forced them to take the video down from YouTube and later tried to use it as evidence in their investigation. This toxic history explains why the state legally labeled the murder as part of an internal street gang conflict, since the two groups shared mutual acquaintances and overlapping territory. When Scrap spotted Lil Steve walking down the block with RondoNumbaNine and a few other 600 members, the years of bullying and the recent rap video triggered an immediate response. Scrap pulled his shirt over his face to mask his identity and opened fire with a .40 caliber handgun, striking Lil Steve in the head and chest. Following the shooting, the investigation almost locked Scrap away for good. What made losing Lil Steve even worse for Rondo was that he actually watched him die right in front of him. Trigger from 600, who also was there when the shooting happened, later stated that Rondo came out of a building hallway just as Scrap opened fire. Instead of running back inside like several others did, Rondo immediately pulled out his own gun and shot back at Scrap and Moochie. Trigger said he gained immense respect for Rondo after that because he chose to stay and fight. A strange detail from the actual police investigation is that Scrap and other members from his side, like Butta and Brick, later accused Rondo of snitching. According to Scrap, Rondo made a statement to the police about Lil Steve's murder. Scrap claimed he actually had the official paperwork proving it, though he never showed it to the public, which makes the rumor hard to believe. Because Rondo was only 14 years old at the time, his juvenile records are sealed, making it practically impossible to verify if a statement exists. Rondo wasn't the only one accused, either. Face and Blast from 600 were also called snitches in this same case. While street records eventually confirmed that Face did talk to the police, the rumors surrounding Blast remain much more uncertain. At first, 600 struggled under the heavy pressure coming from mob in Jaro City. Soon, however, the tables began to turn. Nearly every member of 600 started picking up guns. Deeply affected by the back-to-back deaths of Lil Steve and Jizzle, Rondo was right at the front line, looking for revenge, and in November of 2011, he would get it. On November 10, 2011, a 14-year-old Rondo allegedly caught his first body. Tutu from Jaro City, who had just killed Jizzle a few months prior, was smoking in an alley on the 6500 block of South Rhodes Avenue when he was ambushed and shot multiple times. Street rumors heavily linked Rondo, Buka, Tay Capone, and C-Day to the hit that cold November day. Years later, in November 2013, Beans from McBlock even posted a taunting picture of Tutu on Instagram with the caption, "FM. Shout out 600 Rondo." An interesting detail about this murder is that Rondo and Tay Capone had actually caught Tutu and Corey from Jaro City in that exact same alley back in August 2011, just a few months earlier. Tutu was caught slipping doing the exact same thing in the exact same spot. That first time, Tutu managed to run away, leaving Corey behind to get shot up by Rondo and Tay. Corey luckily survived, and Tay Capone later admitted to the incident in a tweet. Because that specific alley was a popular spot for STL and Jaro City members to take photos and film music videos, 600, Timb, and O Block knew it well. It was a routine block for them to spin while looking for rivals, and they likely lurked there often. Following the murder, Jaro City created the Faction 22 gang to honor his memory. Meanwhile, Rondo's status and respect within 600 grew immeasurably, solidifying him as one of the very first in the newly formed set to catch a body. Even if C-Day gets the most credit for this hit, mostly due to his own self-snitching, it is just as much Rondo and Tay's body as it is his, since all three fired their guns. Another interesting detail about the Tutu murder is that right after Rondo and the others got back to their hideout, the first rival they contacted was FBG Duck, who had recently been put on house arrest. FBG Duck even made a Facebook post about the call, hinting at sliding that same night. Calling up enemies to taunt and mock them right after a murder is a very common theme in the Chicago gang war. No Limit famously did the same thing after KTS Stray was killed. Another wild part of the story is that 600 actually shot up Tutu's funeral. However, the shooting was a complete failure. Bite Down, Manny, and two of Tutu's alleged killers, Rondo and Cede, all hopped out of a car opening fire. People panicked and ran, but the crowd was mostly made up of innocent family members. Once the 600 members realized it was mostly women running around in fear, they bailed from the scene within seconds. The preacher who conducted the funeral has stated that he still suffers from PTSD to this day because of that shooting. The social media mockery of Tutu was relentless after his death. Rondo used to diss him constantly on Twitter. 600 had a deeply personal beef with Tutu, which is why they targeted him so heavily online. Before his death, Tutu frequently got into fights and shootouts with 600 members, including Rondo and Tay, and he had also killed Jizzle. There were even rumors that Tutu came close to catching Cede early in 2011 near the grammar school in Washington Park, but Cede managed to run away. Tutu was mocked by damn near every member of 600 and O-Block. Lil Durk even dissed him years later on the song Still Trappin' featuring King Von, rapping the line, "This Tutu smoke." Rondo stayed active for the rest of 2011. He was a real hothead, and it's crazy to think he was only 14 years old, already had a body under his belt, and had been arrested earlier that year for shoplifting and burglary. In late December 2011, just a month after killing Tutu and shooting up his funeral, Rondo came close to killing FBG Duck's brother, Brick from STL/EBT. Rondo shot Brick at the busy Roosevelt CTA station near Roosevelt Road and State Street. Brick, who was 21 at the time and much older than Rondo, was hit in the upper left torso. He was rushed to Northwestern Memorial Hospital in critical condition but ultimately survived. The shooting caused absolute chaos at the train station. Commuters scrambled for safety, and several people were trampled on the escalators. One witness recalled hearing shots and screams from above before a crowd of panicked people rushed toward them, pushing everyone down the stairs to get away. The incident allegedly started as a massive brawl between a coalition of O-Block, 600, Timb, and Front Street against members from STL, EBT, Jaro City, and Mob. Instead of joining the fistfight, Rondo pulled out his gun and shot Brick in the upper body in front of everyone. Rondo was arrested and charged with aggravated battery with a deadly weapon for the shooting. Buka later accused Brick of snitching on Rondo to the police. Brick being called a snitch is pretty ironic, considering Brick had accused Rondo of snitching on Lil Scrap just a few months prior. That incident perfectly captures exactly who Rondo was at that time. He was a complete loose cannon who just did not care, whether it came to taking a life or doing it right in front of 50 witnesses. For a 14-year-old to pull a gun and open fire in a packed transit station during rush hour shows a level of crash-out energy that few others had, even in that environment. He didn't care about cameras, bystanders, or the consequences. If he saw an op, he was going to shoot. It is hard to pinpoint exactly how long Rondo was locked up for shooting Brick because he was still a juvenile, but his Twitter activity shows him back online by March 2012. This suggests he was likely released after just a month or two, around January or February of 2012. The fact that he got out so quickly is probably due to how the juvenile justice system handles minors, but it is still wild to think about considering the severity of the crime and the dozens of witnesses who saw him open fire in a crowded train station. Oddly enough, it was shooting brick, and not his alleged involvement in the Q2 murder, that actually built Rondo's early clout in the streets and on the internet. The reason for this is probably because he got arrested and the whole situation made a page in the newspaper. Now we enter 2012, a year often called the golden era of drill, for better or worse. The better part was the music. Rondo started messing around with rapping back in 2009 or 2010, but he dropped his first 3 real songs toward the end of 2011, Dials, Get Rude, and In That Field. Dials is always funny to listen to because the sound quality is so bad, but all 3 tracks are legendary considering how young Rondo was and how early it was for the drill scene. 2012 things finally changed for Rondo's music. He finally got the chance to use proper studios with real microphones. Together with LA, he started dropping iconic tracks and fully rode the wave of the booming drill era, which was quickly taking over Chicago, the US, and the rest of the world. The worst part was that in 2012, bodies started dropping left and right. In early February 2012, 051 Young Money caught 600 slipping and killed Shaq. Shaq had been at a party on the 5900 block of South Calumet Avenue. On his way home, he stopped to pee in a nearby alley. 051 had been lurking through 600's blocks for months, desperate for revenge after 600 killed T Streets in November 2011. Melly and Kiddo from 051 were out sliding that night when they spotted Shaq in the alley with a girl. They ran up on him and shot him multiple times in the body and head. 2 months later, in April 2012, Doc from STL/EBT was killed. It's still a bit blurry who actually did it. Street rumors and gang members say it was a mix of 600 and O Block, but the police report points to 600 and Lamron, so it's hard to tell what is true. Shortly into the new year, Rondo allegedly claimed his second body, striking the same rival set as before, Jaro City. On May 12, around 7:29 a.m., police responded to a call of shots fired in an alley on the 6200 block of South Rhodes Avenue. There, they found a man suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, including a fatal shot to the head. The victim was 43-year-old Sean Martin, better known on the streets as Worm. He was pronounced dead at the scene. While that specific territory is known as Taekwon World today, back then it was firmly controlled by Jaro City. Worm was an older figure from the neighborhood and was allegedly a member of the Dark Side faction of Jaro City. He was also the father of Tristo, another known Jaro City member. Because this murder is rarely written about and neither side really mentions it online, there is still some disagreement over who was responsible. However, according to sources, Rondo and other members of 600 were the ones behind the hit. Why Worm was killed is unknown. I don't think 600 was hunting him specifically, but probably like with Tutu they lurked in the area and went through the alleys that they knew members used, and this time it happened to be Worm, who probably wasn't even known to 600's young boys. Rondo was incredibly active during the summer of 2012, constantly looking to catch his rivals off guard. One of his targets that season was Lil Bubba from Jaro City, who years later would go on to become a high-ranking factor for Taekwon World. Rondo caught up with him, but Lil Bubba managed to dodge the gunfire and outrun the situation to save his life. The encounter was clearly something Rondo bragged about on the streets, and about 6 months later, he took the disrespect to social media. He hopped on Twitter and posted, "I chased Lil Bubba with the Glock last summer. Lol. The lil fuck knows how to run." For those of you who don't know what Darkside is or much about Jaro City's history, it helps to understand their background to see why the war with 600 got so deep and hateful. Most people know Jaro City is mainly on 62nd and Vernon, but their territory goes from 61st to 63rd and Vernon. Jaro wasn't always one big group like it became around 2010. Before that, the area was super split up into different small cliques. There was ABM, who claimed both GD and BD. Then you had Darkside, which Worm was part of, and they only claimed BD. There was Cobb, who were GDs, and the Outlaws, who were outlaw GDs. You also had BSG, who were GDs, and a few looser groups that started claiming Hottie World after Hottie was killed by Brick City back in September 2008. This mix is the exact reason why different Jaro members claim different things, like Motor and Skinny claiming BD, or Trell claiming Cobb. Out of all those old mini cliques, Cobb and ABM are pretty much the only ones left that members still claim today. Back in 2003 and 2004, when gun violence in Chicago wasn't nearly as bad as it is today, the area we now know as Jaro City was mostly focused on hustling, just like most sets back then. The biggest group in the area at the time was ABM, and they were making crazy money. A big reason for this was that there wasn't really any tension between the local groups. Everyone got along because they all had the same goal, making money. They barely had any wars on their blocks, so they could just focus on their pockets. ABM was also famous for throwing huge parties. Since the violence wasn't as crazy back then, you didn't have strict all GD or all BD parties like you do now. Everyone hung out together, which is exactly why a lot of the older members from Jaro, O-Block, and 600 all knew each other growing up. For example, D-Roy and Edog used to kick it with Motor and Skinny from Jaro. But things started to go left because some of these parties ABM and the other groups threw would attract guys from outside sets that already had deep beef, like Pocket Town and the Circuit City Gangsters. Because of that, fights and robberies started breaking out at the parties. Like always in Chicago, you eventually have to pick a side. Wars were already jumping off over on the east side where the Pocket and the Circs were at, and since ABM had a lot of east side affiliates and friends on both sides of that beef, they were getting dragged right into the middle of it. One member Jarvis was tight with was Lil Lay from Pocket Town. They actually used to hang out a lot, which made sense because Jarvis moved around the east side a lot. But even after picking sides became a trend, Jarvis kept hanging out with Pocket Town's rivals from Sirkin City. It looked like he was choosing Sirkin over Pocket Town, whether he meant to or not. Fast forward to December 2005. There was a house party packed with ABM and Sirkin members. Lil Lay and a few Pocket Town guys tried to get in, but Jarvis told them no. To Lay, this was proof that Jarvis had picked Sirkin's side. In reality, Jarvis probably just didn't want a shootout starting at the party. What's crazy is that Jarvis had the nerve to say no to Lil Lay, a dude who had the whole east side terrified, with multiple bodies under his belt. Jarvis wasn't a shooter himself, he just had a reputation for getting caught with guns. Lil Lay and his crew left, but they didn't go far. They grabbed their guns, came back, and shot Jarvis right in the face, leaving him dead at the party. Ironically, the party was full of GDs, including guys from Brick City, back before their beef even started. It was hard for people to believe Lay did it, especially since he used to help ABM rob and shoot rivals from Dro City. Lay was just a massive bully, a reputation he reportedly still keeps in prison today. There wasn't a massive war for revenge after Jarvis died, mostly because gun violence wasn't as automatic back then. Guys could still talk things out, and the obsession with get back didn't exist yet. Even after the murder, Lil Lay kept coming through and shooting up ABM's blocks. ABM eventually retaliated by killing Lil Albert from Pocket Town, but Pocket Town immediately fired back and killed another ABM member. After that, ABM pretty much waved the white flag. For them, it was still all about the money and the drugs, and they just weren't trying to slide like that. Around 2007 to 2010, gangs all across Chicago started getting their hands on heavy firepower, mostly because gun crates were constantly getting stolen off freight trains. Weapons were flooding into every neighborhood. Jaro City managed to lock down a huge supply of these guns, which changed the whole dynamic. They didn't have to rely on fistfights anymore. It was their chance to show the city they weren't going to get bullied or let another set slide like Pocket Town did after Jarvis died. Around this time, 065 Young Money and Brick City were tied and started teaming up against Jaro, meaning Jaro now had two different sets to worry about. Later on, Squirt Town got dragged into the mix too after some of their members got shot while hanging out on Brick City's blocks. Squirt Town tried to get back by shooting one of Jaro City's big factors, but that completely backfired. Jaro started spinning Squirt Town's blocks almost every single day until they were pretty much finished. Another one of Jaro's early wars started over personal beefs between BSG rappers, like RiskyRoad and Princeton Mob. Rumor has it Reese killed Scoob from Princeton Mob, which sparked a chain reaction that led to the deaths of Hood from Dro City, Puff from BSG, and Lil Wood from Crash Town. However, the war between Princeton Mob and Jaro fizzled out pretty quickly because their beefs with their main enemies got way more intense, forcing both sides to shift their focus elsewhere. Jaro City had a lot of heavy hitters back in the day. Most of them are gone now, but back then, they really used to bully Wick City and Brick City. Along with 50 Shot, Dome was easily one of Jaro's most active members. He even gave Pocket Town a hard time, sliding on their block multiple times to get back for Jarvis. Dome was actually the one who taught a lot of the younger Jaro factors how to shoot, including Lil B, Lil Daryl, Motor, Boss Trell, and Lil Mike. He even gave his younger sister, Booby, her first gun so she could protect herself. When he was out, Dome would constantly take the younger guys with him to shoot up Timb. Dome was ruthless. Around the start of the beef with Dro City, he allegedly killed Stanley alongside 50 Shot and Cho. Later on, he allegedly killed Slow Folks from Squirt Town. But his biggest name came in 2011 when he killed D-Thang, one of the founders of 600, which he was eventually charged and locked up for. Dome wasn't actually hunting D-Thang down every day like a lot of people made it seem. Most of his run-ins with 600 were actually shootouts with 600 Breezy and D-Day. In fact, back in 2010, Dome got shot by Stello while sliding on Brick City. He was also one of the Jaro members who got shot at by Inky D when D-Thang took Inky D on his very first drill. In the early summer of 2011, 600 and Jaro City actually agreed on a truce. It didn't happen because 600 was giving Jaro hell like they claimed, but because of the wild shootout between 50 Shot and Lil Boo where bullets hit a school bus. On top of that, the feds were watching closely and planning a RICO case, which is the real reason both sides actually honored the truce for a few months. They stopped shooting, but they didn't stop fighting or robbing each other. D-Thang was a maniac back then and used to ride his bike through Jaro's turf just to scare them and watch them run. He also robbed King Lil J and literally took the shirt off TB's back. Because D-Thang was so aggressive, Jaro didn't trust the truce. Tutu and Lil Daryl even started walking TB home just in case. When Mob killed Baldy that summer, 600 shifted their focus to Mob. Since the Jaro truce was still active, D-Thang started sliding on Mob instead, accidentally killing a girl named Crystal while trying to hitch ammo. Even though Jaro's top guys were laying low, they hadn't forgotten that D-Thang killed Dalvin and Hottie. After months of D-Thang bullying them, Dome decided to step up. He took a young Boss Trell under his wing, who was already a heavy shooter drilling on Timba in Zone 7, and the two went out and killed D-Thang, officially ending the truce. According to police, Dome said, "This is for Hottie," during the hit. Dome was charged with the murder and later committed suicide in jail in the summer of 2021. With the truce officially dead, the war exploded. Just 2 weeks after D-Thang was killed, Tutu from Jaro allegedly killed Jizzle from Squirt Town. Before this, Tutu mostly focused on Tim, but he started getting into it with Rondo and Capone. That beef is what led to Jizzle's death, because Jizzle was hanging around thinking he was part of Brick City or 600. Jizzle suffered a horrible death. He was surrounded by 6 people, including Tutu, Butta, Dutchie, Lil B, Young, and K.I. He begged for his life before Lil B and Tutu allegedly finished him. Just 2 months after D-Thang and Jizzle were killed, 600 got their revenge when Rondo, C-Day, and Tay allegedly killed Tutu. By 2012, the war between Jaro City, 600, and O Block completely blew up with bodies dropping left and right. One major reason the hatred reached a point of no return was when Rondo, Bite Down, Manny, and C-Day shot up Tutu's funeral. They pulled up planning to kill any Jaro member they saw, but most of the people there were just family and innocent bystanders. 600 dipped out pretty quickly once they realized it wasn't mostly factors, but the damage was done. The preacher from the funeral has spoken about it since, saying he still suffers from PTSD to this day. Everyone in the streets knew 600 crossed a major line by hitting a funeral, and the war escalated instantly. Jaro's 50 shot caught White from a block, which made King Von completely turn up on Jaro. Von went on a tear, killing P5, shooting Tuan and Gucci, shooting another Jaro member right in the face at Boss CJ's birthday party, and constantly spinning their block. Back to the timeline. Just a few weeks after Worm was killed, 051 Young Money became the next target. 600 was still desperate for revenge after Melly and Kiddo brutally murdered Shaq. On June 22nd, one of Chicago's most infamous hits went down when 600 and Lamrot teamed up to slide on 051, resulting in the murder of 14-year-old Fathead. Antonio Davis, aka Fathead, was visiting his aunt near 70th and Union, an area controlled by SMB, right next to Brick Squad and Low Life. Fathead and his 22-year-old cousin, Erica, decided to walk to a nearby store. On the way, a light-colored van slowed down as it passed them. Even though the guys inside gave them hard stares, Fathead and Erica didn't think much of it at first. But as they reached 69th Street, Erica recognized S. from 600, who was allegedly driving the van, and noticed a passenger in a dark hoodie. Suddenly, the van's side door slid open. OJ and C-Day opened fire, hitting Fathead and causing him to drop to the ground while Erica ran for her life in a panic. Either C-Day or OJ then jumped out of the van, walked calmly over to where Fathead was lying, stood directly over him, and shot him multiple times in the head. Paramedics and police arrived shortly after, but the 14-year-old was already dead on the scene. During the summer of 2012, Rondo just couldn't stay out of the back of a squad car and got locked up several times. In early July, he got pinched for gambling, and just 2 weeks later, the police picked him up again for reckless conduct. A month after that, in late August, things got a lot more serious when he was arrested yet again, this time catching a robbery charge. Fast forwards to October 2012, just a day after King Von, L.A. Capone, and J Money killed P5051 Young Money struck back. This time it was 600's turn to lose someone when Trix was shot and killed while sitting in his car on the 5700 block of South Prairie Avenue. Kiddo from 051 was the one who allegedly pulled the trigger. The reaction from 600 after the hit was messy. Rondo and Side immediately jumped online to claim Trix wasn't actually a member, calling him just an innocent bystander who hung around. Side took it to a disrespectful level, tweeting F Trix even though he had just been kicking it with him days before he died. Most of the other 600 members handled it a bit more respectfully. They paid their respects and paid homage, but they still made sure to point out that Trix wasn't an official member of the squad. We now leave 2012 and enter 2013, which turned out to be a terrible year for Rondo and the rest of 600. In a lot of ways, this year marked the beginning of the end for the set, mostly due to the devastating loss of L.A. Capone and Rondo's increasingly reckless behavior. But first, let's talk about the music. Early in 2013, Rondo started picking up serious traction when he dropped Life of a Savage. The track did so well in the streets that Lupe Fiasco actually jumped on the official remix, giving Rondo major mainstream exposure right out of the gate. Then came the definitive moment of his career, his verse on L.A. Capone's Play for Keeps. That track became an instant drill classic, and Rondo followed up that team momentum by jumping on 600 alongside D-Day and L.A., solidifying the 600 set's dominance on YouTube. The biggest solo moment of his 2013 run was releasing his Hang With Me remix. The video went crazy viral, heavily driven by the track's raw energy and his brother Big Swirl doing his famous dance in the background. Right after, he capitalized on the buzz by dropping his breakout mixtape, Real Dude for Life, which featured heavy street anthems like Taliban and Trap Spot with Fredo Santana. He closed out his massive musical run for the year by collaborating with Lil Durk and L.A. Capone on the song Brothers. Later in 2013, Rondo was allegedly involved in another fatal shooting, but it wasn't an enemy who lost their life, and it wasn't intentional, at least what we know of. Instead, Rondo accidentally shot one of his own associates while returning fire during a shootout. Rondo, who originally had ties to the RiskyRoad set, was hanging out with two members from that neighborhood, Mackey and BT. Out of nowhere, rival shooters pulled up and opened fire on the group. Mackey immediately ran to find cover, while Rondo stood his ground, pulled out his handgun, and started firing back at the attackers. When the gunfire ceased and Mackey returned to the scene, he found BT lying dead on the ground right in front of Rondo. When Mackey asked what had happened, Rondo admitted that he had accidentally struck and killed BT while trying to shoot back at the ops. BT was hit multiple times in the head. Rondo then threatened and told Mackey to cover for him and tell the rest of the gang that the rival shooters were the ones responsible for BT's death. After Rondo shot BT, he and Mackey allegedly went through BT's pockets because BT had some money on him, and Mackey was known for always being broke. When Mackey returned to the block, he stuck to the script and lied about how the shooting went down. However, the rest of the guys immediately grew suspicious when they noticed Mackey suddenly had cash on him despite his history of being broke. They pressed him hard until he cracked, and once he confessed to what really happened, they kicked him off the block for good. Not long after, Rondo actually attended BT's funeral. Members from RiskyRoad were deep in attendance, and they ended up trailing Rondo outside the service, fully intending to kill him right then and there. Rondo only survived the encounter because a car accident happened nearby, which brought a heavy police presence right outside the venue and forced them to call off the hit. Unable to catch him at the funeral, RiskyRoad officially greenlit Rondo, putting out an order to strip him of his life the moment anyone spotted him on the streets. Ultimately, the block never got their revenge, as Rondo got locked up for the taxi murder a few months later. During this period, Rondo's work rate was unmatched. Just a day after one release, he dropped the music video for Shooters alongside L.A. Capone, another track that showcased his skillful flow. On June 10, 2013, 600 dropped their first official group anthem, 6-0, featuring Rondo, L.A., S. and Ide. The video opened with a jail call from D. Rose, who was locked up at the time, and featured cameos from a ton of 600 members, like 600 Breezy, Honcho, Jubilo, Tay 600, and Young Famous, alongside O-Block factors like Boss Top and J Money, who tragically passed away later that year. Drill fans always point to this era as a defining moment. The energy and output from 600 in 2013 left a massive mark on the scene, and most people consider it the group's musical prime. Some even call this period the golden age of Chicago drill, looking back at a time when so many of its key figures were still alive and dropping heat. The influence of this run reached way beyond Chicago, too. Even artists like 6ix9ine have credited RondoNumbaNine as the main inspiration for starting their own rap careers. Right in the middle of all this momentum, on July 30, 2013, Rondo and L.A. dropped their biggest hit, the video for Play for Keeps. Today, the track has over 60 million views. It's a pure drill anthem and is widely regarded as one of the best Chicago drill songs of all time. This was the exact moment that solidified Rondo as a potential superstar. The video even featured a cameo from Lil Durk, who would go on to become one of the biggest names in the entire music industry. By September 2013, 600 had all the momentum in the booming drill scene. Backed by a heavy street reputation and a roster of talented rappers, the relatively small crew was easily outrunning most of their Chicago contemporaries and racking up millions of streams. L.A. Capone himself seemed destined for mainstream stardom, with the perfect opportunity to finally leave the streets behind. Unfortunately, everything changed on the night of September 26, 2013, at that studio, a fateful night that altered the course of 600 forever. September 26th stands as one of the darkest days for 600, Rondo, and the entire Chicago drill scene. It was the day L. Capone was killed, and Rondo lost his closest friend. And keep in mind, this was only 3 weeks after J Money, who was very close with Rondo and many other 600 members, had been killed by Lil B from EBT. To understand how it all went down, you have to look at how the day started. Between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m., L. Capone, JB bin Laden from 400D, and Ocho from a block were all at court for a trespassing case. After dealing with the legal issues for a few hours, they went back home to regroup. Not long after, they decided to hit the studio to work on some music. Around 3 p.m., LA and JB bin Laden pulled up to a studio on the second floor of 7034S. Stony Island. The block was controlled by Zolan/ABM. It wasn't exactly enemy territory, but it wasn't their block either. It was basically neutral ground. A few members from one block and 600 had family ties to people from Zoland, which probably made them feel a bit safer, even though it was still a risky move. LA and JB spent about 2.5 hours recording before they wrapped things up. JB actually filmed a video during the session that is still online today, and it's wild to watch knowing what happened next. In the clip, LA is performing his song Brothers, a track that feels eerie today, since it ended up being one of the last things he ever recorded.
What that is though? Just record. This gonna be a hit song, man. You recording this shit? Get this shit on camera, man. Get this shit on fuck.
While L. Capone was in the studio with JB, Lil Mick and Rockhead from 051 Young Money, along with Mako from the Met Boys, were chilling at a barbecue near 51st and Prairie. During the cookout, Rockhead got a call from Hard Knock, a member of 757. Hard Knock told him that LA was at the studio recording a track and dissing 051. In a crazy twist, Hard Knock was actually inside the studio working on music right alongside LA, JB, a former 051 member, and the studio owner. At the time, 757 wasn't considered an enemy set to 600, despite being close with 051. There were actually family ties between 600 and 757, and Hard Knock was looked at more as a music engineer than a street factor. After getting the drop, Rockhead, Mako, and Lil Mick linked up with Big A from 051 at a gas station on 67th and Stony Island. They split into two cars and drove over to the studio, parking a few houses down on opposite ends of the alley. They sat in their cars waiting for about 20 to 30 minutes, just trapping LA inside. When LA and JB finally came out of the back of the building, they sat on the porch waiting for a ride. After a few minutes, LA got impatient, maybe sensing that something was wrong, and started walking home while talking on the phone. trying to figure out a ride. Capone had actually offered to pick him up that day, but he was about 10 minutes away. LA told him don't worry about it and decided to just walk it since his house wasn't that far. There's a popular rumor that LA texted Lil Durk for a ride right at that moment, mostly because of Durk's lyrics in the song Made It Out where he says, "I was so high, I wish I replied to LA's text." But that's not true. The text was sent much earlier in the day and had nothing to do with needing a ride. Around that same time, Hard Knock left the studio, walking out with Snoop from 757. As L. Capone entered the alley wearing a black hoodie, Lil Mick spotted him. He hopped out of his car and crept up, firing 2 shots. One hit LA in the lower right back, lodging just above his kidney, and the other hit his upper right thigh, exiting through the inner groin. LA collapsed instantly. Lil Mick tried to finish him off by emptying the rest of the clip, but his gun jammed. He bolted north up the alley back to his car, and both vehicles peeled out. JB, who was still on the porch, ran straight to LA and tried to comfort him, shouting, "Bro, you're good, bro." Paramedics arrived minutes later and rushed LA to Northwestern Hospital. He was still conscious in the ambulance and told them a car had pulled into the alley right before he heard 5 or 6 shots. He described the shooter as a guy in a black hoodie who ran back to the car before they sped off. When asked if he knew who did it, LA replied, "I don't know." LA lost consciousness in the ambulance and never woke up, passing away during surgery around 8:30 p.m. In a tragic coincidence, he had been shot in that exact same general area, the upper right rear thigh, a year earlier by Boss Trail from STL/EBT. That previous damage likely played a major role in why these new wounds proved fatal. Later that night, the 4 people involved in the murder met up in Washington Park to talk about the fact that they had pulled it off. In a wild twist of geography, Lil Mick and L. Capone actually lived only about a half-mile apart, Mick on the 7000 block of S. Chapel and LA on the 7000 block of S. Bennett. The studio sat right between their blocks, making it an equal distance from both of their houses. Hard Knock, who orchestrated the setup, was a regular at that studio. When the police questioned him, he completely denied knowing anything about LA's beef with 051, claimed he didn't know Rocco, Mako, Big A, or Lil Mick, and denied making any phone calls. However, a former 051 member who was inside the studio later blew his cover. He admitted that Hard Knock did call Rocco, but claimed it was just to invite him over to smoke weed. Both that 051 member and the studio owner immediately saw right through the excuse. Recognizing it as a blatant setup, they told Hard Knock to call Rocco back and tell him not to come, knowing exactly what would happen if 051 crossed paths with L. Capone. Despite that warning, the 051 members ignored it, pressed forward with their plan, and took LA's life. As many people know, all 3 surviving individuals involved in the hit were eventually arrested and charged with the murder. Big A would have faced the same fate, but she was killed on November 14, 2013, allegedly by Bezu from THF 46. The arrests happened back-to-back in August 2014. Rockhead was picked up first on the 20th. Lil Mick was taken into custody the following day on the 21st, and Mako was locked up on the 22nd. Once they were in the interrogation room, the cooperation started and they all turned on each other. Rockhead pointed the finger at Lil Mick as the shooter. Mako did the same, claiming Mick was the triggerman and even adding that he initially refused to let Mick back into the getaway car. Lil Mick, trapped in the middle, ended up snitching right back in a desperate attempt to save himself, even talking to the police about DHF-46's involvement in Big A's murder. The legal fallout resulted in heavy prison time for everyone involved, though things recently changed for the shooter. Lil Mick was initially hit with a 60-year sentence. However, he recently won an appeal that drastically reduced his sentence to 20 years, putting his projected release date in 2034. Rockhead received a 30-year sentence in 2017 and is currently locked up with a projected release date in 2038. Mako received the harshest outcome, getting hit with a 45-year sentence that keeps him behind bars until 2059. It is hard to overstate the massive impact LA's murder had on 600. He was quite literally their ticket out of the trenches, one of the most talented rappers in Chicago and the undisputed face of the set. He was best friends with Rondo, C-Day, Tay Capone, and D-Rose, and what a lot of people overlook is that LA wasn't just a musician, he had a heavy street reputation and had put in real work for 600. The grief from his loss quickly turned into a dark, chaotic energy. Tay Capone even mentioned in his song Way Back that they were out actively looking for Lil Mick's mother, and rumors still circulate that Lil Durk himself slid with Rondo and C-Day before the law caught up with them. People often forget just how close Lil Durk was with LA, C-Day, Rondo, and the rest of the circle, and the loss affected him deeply. The murder of L.A. Capone was truly the beginning of the end for 600. It is almost impossible to fully describe how badly his death shook the foundation of the group, but the events that followed speak for themselves. Within just a few short months, 600 began to completely implode from the inside, and Rondo would play a big role in that. Before we move into 2014, we have to talk about the infamous picture of Rondo sitting with a rocket launcher in an office chair. The photo is one of the most legendary pieces of internet lore from the 2010 Chirac Trill era, sparking wild rumors about how a teenager on the South Side managed to get his hands on military-grade hardware. The truth behind the photo comes down to clever internet posturing and a completely harmless military surplus item. In late 2013, the drill scene was exploding globally, and guys from the 600 crew were constantly showing off heavy weaponry on social media to shock rivals and build an intimidating image. Around October or November, Rondo posted the flick on Instagram, and it went viral instantly, cementing his reputation as one of the most extreme figures in the scene. While it looked terrifying, the rocket launcher was actually a U.S. military M72 Law or a Swedish AT-4. These are single-use, fire-and-forget weapons. Once a soldier fires the rocket exactly once at a military range, the empty fiberglass tube is completely useless, cannot be reloaded, and is treated legally as plastic scrap. Anyone can buy them online off eBay or at a military surplus store for around $400 as a harmless collector's piece. The actual story of how Rondo got the photo is a lot simpler than the rumors. The tube wasn't his, and he didn't smuggle a bazooka into the city. He was just at a studio session, and the studio owner's father happened to own the empty tube as a collectible. Rondo saw it, thought it looked crazy, and asked if he could take a picture with it for the gram. They told him it was cool, he posted it, and the internet went crazy. Even though it was just a hollow tube, the Chicago Police Department didn't know that at first. It triggered an active investigation, and CPD even issued internal warning bulletins telling officers that Southside gang members might have anti-tank weaponry. Rondo eventually had to go online to clear his name once the heat from the feds and local police got too intense. Because the item was completely inert, he was never charged, but the image remains one of the wildest moments of that era. Moving into 2014, the year kicked off with heavy hitters returning to the streets. On January 16th, D-Rose was released from jail, and just 1 month later, King Von was freed. Both were top-tier factors who were eager to touch down and get back for the friends they had lost while incarcerated. Their rivals were hoping to catch them before they could do any damage, but both came out and allegedly caught major targets, with D-Rose being linked to the murder of Lil Mark from 051 Young Money, and King Von killing K.I. from STL/EBT. However, before the Lil Mark situation unfolded, another high-profile hit took place that ultimately sealed D-Rose's fate and served as a major piece in the puzzle of 600's collapse, the murder of Big V. According to Chicago police, 14-year-old Venzel Richardson, known as Big V, was walking with 3 to 5 other teenagers on the 6100 block of South Vernon Avenue around 8:20 p.m. on February 12, 2014. He was just walking home from a convenience store when a white van pulled up, and a gunman inside opened fire. Big V was shot in the head and tragically died right there on the scene. Street rumors immediately placed D-Rose, C-Day, and Lil Boo from 600, along with Lil Loss from Front Street, inside that white van. A 13-year-old witness named D-Money cooperated with the police and identified D-Rose as the shooter who fired from inside the vehicle, stating he recognized Rose from social media and Chief Keef's music videos. However, despite the state's case, a lot of the details surrounding the conviction didn't match up with D-Rose's actual street reputation, a contradiction that becomes clearer later on. The friends Big V was walking with that night were Taekwon members TB, D-Money, Mook, C, and White Mike. Big V was shot in the head right in front of them, but TB and the rest of the group luckily managed to dodge the gunfire before the van peeled off into the night. Just 2 weeks after Wenzel's murder, it was Rondo and Side's turn to commit a hit, one that would ultimately land both of them in prison for life. This was the murder of taxi driver Javon Boyd, which street lore often claims was Rondo's fourth body. While plenty of people doubt Rondo actually had that many under his belt, it's a known reality in those circles. Even if the targets weren't prominent factors and one was a tragic mistake, Rondo was notoriously reckless. On the night of February 22, 2014, Side, Rondo, D. Rose, Tay, Memo's little sister, and another girl were riding around in a vehicle, allegedly the very same white van used in the Big V shooting. When they spotted a car parked on the street, Rondo, D. Rose and Side jumped out and walked up to it. One of them asked the driver where he was from, and then the gunfire started. Javon Boyd was shot to death, with the evidence heavily pointing to Side as the main triggerman. According to witnesses on the scene, they watched Side, Rondo and D. Rose approach the vehicle and exchange brief words with Javon. Moments later, they saw flashes of light erupting from the handgun Side was holding and Javon jumping inside the vehicle as the bullets struck him. Once the shooting stopped, the group scrambled back to their cars. Witnesses saw D. Rose get inside one of the vehicles, visibly shaken, muttering "shit and he's dead." Meanwhile, Rondo and Side sprinted back to another car before all three vehicles peeled away from the curb. As the car sped off, the witness looked back and could see Javon slumped over inside his car. Javon Boyd's life was defined by extreme, unimaginable tragedy long before his death, making his murder feel even more devastatingly senseless. When he was just 9 years old, a catastrophic apartment fire in the Robert Taylor homes claimed the lives of his mother and all of his younger siblings while he was away at school. Becoming the sole survivor of his immediate family at such a young age left a massive void. Yet he managed to beat the odds and grow up into a man characterized by a resilient spirit. Though he faced serious legal trouble as a young adult, he made a conscious decision to completely turn his life around, dedicating his entire existence to providing a stable, loving life for his 11-year-old daughter. To make sure his daughter had everything she needed, Javon worked tirelessly across 2 jobs. He spent his days working for a local green energy program and took on late-night shifts as a livery driver to bring in extra income for their lifestyle. He was an incredibly active father, constantly taking his daughter skating, bowling, and on vacations. Known affectionately by his family as Ballhead, he was remembered as someone who was always smiling and carrying an immense amount of life inside him. The tragedy of his death is compounded by how forward-looking his life was right up until the final moments. Born in New Orleans, Javon was happily planning a road trip down south for Mardi Gras week and had been helping his grandmother study for her driving test so they could split the driving duties on the way down. The morning before he was killed, he told her over the phone, "Next week, we'll be out of here." Instead, at 4 a.m. on February 22nd, while parked and simply waiting to pick up a passenger to make some extra money, he was ambushed in his car and shot repeatedly. He passed away at the hospital shortly after, leaving behind a family that had already lost so much, and a daughter whose life he had worked so hard to build. Early internet rumors claimed the hit was direct retaliation for L.A. Capone and that Javon had set L.A. up. But that was completely false. It was a random, senseless act. Javon was a former member from SteveDrive but had long abandoned that life to work as a driver to support his family, making the situation incredibly tragic. The state's case came down heavy on them within weeks. The two girls in the vehicle cooperated with the police, explicitly naming Side as the shooter. Because Memo's sister was one of the individuals who talked to detectives, it created a deep, permanent rift, which is exactly why Side has shown intense animosity toward Memo over the years. Beyond the witness statements, Side sealed his own fate with some of the sloppiest mistakes imaginable. He accidentally dropped his cell phone right at the crime scene and left his fingerprints on the victim's car. When the trial wrapped up, Side was sentenced to 38 years in prison, while Rondo was handed 39 years. Many found the breakdown strange since Side was the one who fired the shots and left a trail of physical evidence. In the end, Rondo was convicted as an accomplice under Illinois accountability laws, largely sunk by the witness testimony. When it came to the actual trial and how the state built their case against Rondo, the prosecutors painted a picture of him being just as hands-on as Side. According to the state's attorney, Rondo and Side actually drove over to the 3700 block of South Princeton Avenue that night looking for retaliation after a fight had broken out earlier on the block. Around 3:55 a.m., when they spotted Javon sitting in his car waiting on a fare, Rondo and Side walked right up to the passenger side of the vehicle. Prosecutors stated that Rondo actually tried to pull the passenger door open first and that his DNA print was found on the door handle. When they couldn't get in, witnesses saw both Rondo and his accomplice pull out handguns and start letting loose into the car together. Javon didn't stand a chance. He was hit 7 times across his legs and back. Rondo ended up getting caught because the whole situation was sloppy. Part of the hit was caught on surveillance video, and they found fingerprints left behind on the victim's car. But what really sealed Rondo's fate was that eyewitnesses on the scene explicitly pointed him out to detectives and identified him as one of the shooters who was standing right there firing into the vehicle. Rondo has now spent about 12 years behind bars for the murder of Javon Boyd, counting his time waiting for trial in Cook County Jail. His years in prison have been plagued by endless snitching allegations. The drama got so bad that even Side openly accused Rondo of trying to throw him under the bus in court, while others have flipped the script and claimed Side was the one who talked. The finger-pointing has gone back and forth for years, but none of it has changed their legal situation. Both Rondo and Side have grown desperate for freedom and have filed multiple appeals. Lil Durk has repeatedly kept fans' hopes up by claiming Rondo would be home before Christmas, but those promises never turn into reality. At this point, it looks like the justice system wanted to make an example out of Rondo, Side, and D. Rose, meaning none of them are likely to get out early. While locked up, Rondo has been involved in several prison fights, but he also shocked fans when video surfaced of him talking to Lil Mick from 051 Young Money, the man convicted of killing Rondo's best friend, L. Capone. The two were even seen laughing together on camera. Rondo later addressed the backlash on social media, writing, "There is a time and place for everything. We weren't kicking it though." On a more positive note, Rondo managed to earn his GED while inside. Hopefully, whenever he does finally get out, he will have found peace and can return to society as a changed man.
And, the dance shit, do shit, I sat back, I just sat back, watch my brother, a nigga who I call my brother sit next to me in a room full of jewels and play innocent while he throw me. you know, and say I got out on somebody, you know, and make interviews and send confused messages, you know. I went to trial with a public defender. I ain't have a paid attorney, you know. Before we went to trial, my lawyer put in a motion, trial severed, because his attorney had intentions on saying I was the shooter and his client wasn't, you know. Before we went to trial, both attorneys discussed this, you know. You can't nobody tell me that you got a $20,000 attorney and you ain't what he was gonna do. You know, your attorney speaks for you. You feel me? Whatever he say that he gonna do, it's either you agree to or you give him the okay to do it. You know, but before he go out there and defend you, he let you know what he plan to do and say, because you know.
Right demon, get up off this bitch, I'm fiending. Rondo back, I'm lit, I'm cheating. Bells back, I'm go, I mean it. Ain't no who won't do that, leave it. No shit, yes, I leave you bleeding. Rondo's birthday, say I'm cheating. They gon' just give me a reason. Oh, Steve, Jersey on, gotta get that back, gotta get back home. I stand no teddy when I'm alone. I lay that shit and make this song. 2 times on this 6-0 flow. They tell me that I stay on go. Way back, I was wiping nose. Hey, who up, let's get that zone. Don't say no wrong, but up that phone. Say what down, I'm a tweet, don't want, trying to talk with love, but a little your tone like case, I'm a taste and give you alone. Man, niggas all they living that life. Too dark, run to be under your strike. Just see yourself, you'll be alright. This shit too real, so you gotta stay tight. Caught up in the hype, better keep your pipe. Yeah, Blake, gotta go pick that gold. Send down to the drill, this shit too real. Blood all over his clothes. Bossed up, I'm too grown. Like Kobe 24. I've been locked up for about 7. That shit that too long. Took me up the fold. Now still teeth for the can. Chill go crazy, that chill go crazy. That's so LA, I'm still a man. Remember they saw some fans. Too kicked, I love my fans. That 30 in my pants. Please don't tweak, I'll leave you land. That shit crazy, right? I shouldn't have did that psych. I lost too many of my brothers. Fuck that shit, I'd rather fight. Ain't talking fight with hands. I'm talking fight with blick. Lawyer pay them minutes, can't even be back home, they on my dick. This nigga out here to sit. I don't fuck with those. Real up in my circle, these are stoppers that they never froze. Pull up shooting shows, AK's going gold. Fuck your platinum, he a phantom, fuck your snap your soul. I'm a rapper plus a factor, real to the bone. You in the trenches, pay attention, can't talk on the phone. They might pull up blow, some might pull up gold. Say you don't put it in the grip, your joint, that's the only bundle, no. You know? Oh, LA. Stay on point, better grip your joint, that's the only way I know, you know, LA.
Looking back at Rondo's whole run, it's just crazy to think about how much raw potential he completely threw away. The guy was sitting on a massive musical trajectory, getting features from legends like Lupe Fiasco and working side by side with Lil Durk when the global spotlight was locked onto Chicago. He easily could have used that momentum to permanently get himself and his family off the block. Instead, he let his hot-headed nature and the street life completely dictate his future. He was too busy chasing rank, crashing out over block beefs, and adding bodies to his name when he already had a foot out the door. Going from being one of the most promising young artists in the drill scene to getting slapped with a 39-year sentence over a sloppy, reckless hit on a livery driver is just a textbook case of a total crash out. He had the world in his hands and chose to be a block factor instead, leaving nothing behind but internet lore, a ruined family, and decades to sit inside a cell thinking about what could have been. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay safe, and may God bless you all. Let me know what you want to see next.